I noticed that your background largely was as an equity analyst or maybe as an investor in technology and healthcare before you decided to found Amplify MD. Curious, what was it that prompted you to found the company? What were you researching kind of healthcare technology at the time and you uncovered a gap in the market?
Yeah, absolutely. So, from the investing side of things, what led to the realization of how massive the problem was that we're looking to solve is exactly that. My background in investing and looking at companies and where the opportunities were, what problems there were to solve. More specifically, though, in terms of what inspired us, and I don't know if you're aware, we're a husband and wife co-founding couple.
Okay.
My husband and I both come from families of physicians, and we'd, grown up hearing of both their love and passion for delivering patient care and excellent patient care, but also their frustrations with the system and what wasn't working. And historically, when people look at ways to make healthcare better, they usually go one of two ways, throwing headcount at it and throwing people and bodies, or throwing technology at it. And what we've seen again and again, the most successful solutions, this is what I saw as an investor as well, the most successful companies did a little bit of both. It's a combined tech-enabled solution that takes the best of both worlds and makes sure that they fit into the very rigid, the very specific, the very custom needs of healthcare, right? Because
Mhm.
if you know one hospital, you know one hospital. And that does not translate to the next hospital or the next client or the next partner you work with. And you really need to be able to meet them where they were. Um, so we saw a need, underlying need in the market is the fact that there just aren't enough physicians, unfortunately. And you and I, as consumers of healthcare, probably feel that. But physicians themselves, hospital health systems, the actual providers of healthcare also feel that because they're stretched thin. We've heard about the burnout issues. And what we wanted to do was find a way to help solve both of those, right? The fact that the physicians we do have are burning out. They feel very frustrated what they can and can't do based on the limitations. And then there's a ton of patients out there around the country, not just in rural America, but everywhere, that can't get access to the care they need in a timely manner. So we knew that the way to solve that was through some form of virtual care. Unfortunately, legacy telehealth again only fixed it on a supply demand geographic imbalance perspective. It does not do anything for the underlying problem of we don't have enough providers. To solve that, you need to make each provider we do have more efficient and be able to see more patients in the same amount of time. And that's what we solve with our combined virtual care platform plus the integrated clinical network because we are fully integrated to the EMRs. We are fully controlling the entire workflow. We can strip out all of that burdensome admin time, non-patient facing time so they can focus on the patient and cut out all of the pre-charting, post-charging, documentation, billing stuff that can be automated for them and streamlined for them so that they can see more patients.
Hmm. So is this being used by physicians like across the US that have, physical practices, but then they just add on your solution to extend their availability?
Yeah, so you can think of it a few key ways. If you're asking about the underlying client base, it's typically hospitals and health systems and other provider areas. It could be in large physician groups. It's probably not going to be a mom and pop physician, at least not yet. That's not kind of where we play at this time. It is large healthcare providers and health systems that are looking to add access to care, whether it's in the acute care hospital setting or in the ambulatory setting with outpatient virtual clinics, et cetera. And what they're doing is bringing us on and integrating our virtual care platform into their EMR, and then they have automatic access to 15 different clinical lines of coverage across the entire spectrum of care, whether that's the ED, inpatient units, outpatient virtual clinics, or direct to patient.
Hmm. And is it obvious, like the ROI is obvious to these, healthcare systems, like, okay, we should use Amplify MD because it's expanding our coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things I love hearing from clients is this is amazing. This is such a no-brainer. I wish I knew about you guys before, right? And
Mhm.
I hear some version of that all the time from clients, potential clients, new conversations. And that's really heartening to hear because that means we are hitting and touching that key pain point in the market right now. ROI, I'll give you two examples. On the inpatient setting, we're cutting transfers 80 to 85%. And for a hospital, I'm sure you've heard that hospitals around the country, they work on razor thin margins. There's a lot that have closed their doors over the last few years as reimbursements have gotten really tight, et cetera. So that every single patient they get to keep because we can provide them that access to care virtually, which otherwise they would have had to ship out, is another, 10,000, 15,000 plus dollars straight to that hospital's financials. And that's huge. And you multiply that out over multiple patients. That's a very simple ROI metric for hospital leadership to get behind. Then on top of that, if you look at the ambulatory setting, leakage. So what leakage means is a patient leaves that network, leaves that hospital system. In many metro areas, suburban areas, et cetera, there's multiple hospitals you can go to. So if you're not going to get care in a timely manner at hospital A, you're going to turn around and go to hospital B, right?
Hmm.
And that is devastating to a hospital's finances, devastating to the whole entire network. They really depend on keeping the patients in network for kind of their continued financial and economic success. If they have access to AmplifyMD, they're able to keep those patients in network, be able to see them in a timely manner. So not only is the patient getting timely, high quality care, but they're also staying within that hospital system, that community, so they're not leaving and taking their healthcare dollars with them to maybe a town or a hospital a couple hours away. And at the end of the day, bringing down care for the ability to access care for everybody else in that community.
Uh-huh. Could you give us a sense for the scale of the business currently, like Amplify MD, how far is its reach, number of, systems it's being used in, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. We are, let's see, we started back in 2019 with our first hospital in rural Florida, and we've grown, exponentially since then. We're in over just shy of 400 programs today. We see patients, like I said, across the entire spectrum of care, across clinical care settings, so ambulatory and acute care, and we do that across the entire 50 states. So we can see patients from Hawaii all the way through to New York City, all the way down to Miami. So it's fantastic to be able to see patients and serve patients across the country. We are seeing hundreds of thousands of patients a year. And again, this is across multiple specialty areas. Our larger specialties by focus area as well as by physician include in no particular order infectious disease, neurology, psychiatry, cardiology, hematology, oncology, nephrology, and palliative care. And so these are the areas that, as you can hear and see, huge spectrum of
Hmm.
care. And then that can be done inpatient or outpatient. And then on the pure outpatient side, it tends to be more endocrinology, rheum, and derm. There's less of a need for those on the inpatient side. But across those, as you can probably tell, these are areas that have wait times of months, right, in the outpatient setting today, if you're trying to get an appointment yourself, or in the ambulatory setting, in the inpatient setting. These are hospitals and situations where many times you don't have access to that care and you're getting transferred if you're a patient in need.
Hmm. There's other telemedicine companies out there or virtual care facilitators and platforms. How do you differentiate Amplify MD from others?
Yeah, no, great question. So I would say I'd love to answer that in like the simplest way possible, which is we are the only ones doing what we're doing, right? There is no other player out there that is a combined virtual care platform plus the integrated medical group. Um, Most people are one or the other, right? So they are either the medical group and can provide some services. When you're looking at that batch of population, one, they don't have a platform, and then two, they don't have the breadth of services. So we are the only ones that offer the breadth of 15 different clinical lines under coverage across any care setting. So inpatient, outpatient, et cetera. Most groups will focus on one or two, and they'll focus on either inpatient or outpatient. You're not going to get someone that can be your full comprehensive
Mm.
partner on that front. And then you take it on the technology side, we are literally the only partner out there that can integrate with all of your EMRs, right? So whether it's Epic or Cerner and the big guys, all the
Mm-hmm.
way down to the CPSIs and Meditechs, Paragons, et cetera, of the world. So it doesn't really matter what your system has used or who you're partnered with as a hospital or as a provider group, we can work with you. And that is really powerful to be able to say, your technology doesn't matter, I can work across all of it, is a really, really powerful statement to make, and no one else can say that.
Hmm. What's been the biggest challenge to scaling this company?
Biggest challenge. Oh, that's a good one. Um, I would say for our perspective, healthcare is so regulated and there's a lot of uncertainty about it. So the current political environment is not, let's just say, ideal with the constant, we're going to shut down the government, or we're not going to shut down the government, we're going to extend telehealth flexibilities, we're not going to help extend telehealth flexibilities. At the end of the day, I think everyone realizes realistically that cat's out of the bag. You're not going to not have telehealth available across the country. There would be the way that people have access to care today has changed dramatically from the pre-COVID days.
Hmm.
And going back to tell someone, nope, you can't have that virtual appointment, you have to go in, is not going to go down well, right? But they keep playing with it as a political football. And then, of course, that paralyzes everybody because, again, with these razor thin, low single digit margins, they can't afford not to get paid. And so that really doesn't help people get the care they need when they need it. So that's been very frustrating from just a political environment perspective, regardless of what side of the red-blue spectrum you're on, I think. So I would say that that's been a challenge that we just have to navigate through and just be aware of as we continue to develop out the program. And then just in terms of educating people, right? This is a new, people talk about category killers. We're actually or category creators. We're in a very enviable position of creating a brand new category that doesn't exist, which is virtual care across the entire spectrum, right? Before in the early 2000s, you had maybe in the ED, you had stroke and you had psych and you had radiology. That was it. It wasn't till COVID, and it wasn't until we really started up in a big way to have all of the other specialties available. So pretty now we can offer any E&M specialty. So if it's non-procedure based, I can do it for you, right? And that is a novel concept, and it's still something that some people will be a little bit shy about in terms of I'm a rheumatologist. Don't I need to touch on my patient? About 80% of the job can be done through labs and charts and the virtual video visit, virtual exam. So yes, there's always going to be patients that can't be seen appropriately through virtual care, and we're never going to claim that it's 100%. But the fact that you can see 80 to 90% of your patients and get most of your patients treated is, I think, a fantastic solution for when you have no other options, especially.
Mhm. Um, Curious, given that you had this long span of time where you were an investor and then you switched over into being an entrepreneur and building a company, how was that transition? Was it fairly intuitive to you, how to set up a company, how to build a culture, how to lead people?
Those are three very different questions. I would say the first two, yes. The third one is still a learning, exercise in progress always, I think. So in terms of like figuring out what I learned as an investor that carries over, figuring out how to tell your story, right? Because a lot of creating a startup and a lot of founding a company is getting people to A, understand your idea, B, be inspired by your idea, and three, invest in your idea.
Hmm.
And so all of that from coming from the investor side is figuring out what worked for me. When was I intrigued by a concept? When was I willing to put money behind a concept? How did people explain the story? Get the investors passionate about it, get people excited about it, get employees excited about it, right? You need to be able to recruit from day one when it's just you and get everybody else on board with, it's basically a wing and a prayer at that point of like, hey, I have this great idea. I think it's going to be awesome. Okay, great. Tell me more about it. You have to be able to sell that. So I definitely learned a lot from the key startups that I invested in, throughout my career and figuring out how they did it. Like when they did it right, what were the commonalities? When it didn't go over so well, what happened there? And kind of take those learnings and hopefully I don't repeat the latter and I do a lot of the former. In terms of what it takes to be a great leader, I think that's something I've always been, as an investor, you're usually an individual contributor, right? And you're part of a team, absolutely, but a lot of it's just dependent on you and what you do and your calls and your investments and things like that. And I love that environment. Being a CEO is very different, right? You are, yes, part of it is the IC role and you're making connections and all of that kind of stuff, and you're explaining the story, talking to the board and investors. But a bigger part of it is, hiring the right team, bringing in the right people, having people that are mission driven in the same way you are, that have value the culture, and value kind of what you're doing for the clients, see what you're doing with the clients the same way that you do. And finding people to kind of carry that culture forward. And that is something, one, is really, really exciting to do, but it's not easy. It's something that it doesn't come naturally to me because I've very much always been a doer. Like I've been used to doing it myself. So I've really enjoyed learning that. It's definitely something I guarantee learn something new about it every single day. And I appreciate that.
You've brought in some capital. I'm wondering, and given that you had the perspective of being an investor, what did you look for in the investors you brought into your company?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I learned throughout my career is money's there. Like if the idea is good and the business is solid, you're going to be able to get money from somewhere. The terms, sure, you can finagle over the terms, but that's going to come. The bigger thing is once they're on your cap table, they're on your cap table forever, right? And we're not a public company, so it's not like they can just sell the stock and get out. So you really need to look at who is somebody that I trust, that I think is going to be value add. What else do they bring to the table besides a check? And that if, other founders are listening to this, I would say that would be my biggest piece of advice is look beyond the money, look beyond the check, see what else they bring to the table because the connections, their willingness to work with you, give you advice, their willingness to make intros, all of those kinds of things are really the key to success from a strong investor founder relationship because those are the things that you can't buy, right? And you
Mhm.
can buy a lot of different things with the money you raise across the full spectrum, but those relationships and that credibility that you get from a high quality investor that has the right soft, if you will, the soft value to bring to the table is really key.
Mhm. And so have you found that with your investors that they brought value to the table aside from the financial capital?
Yes, absolutely. So we've been very lucky. Our seed, Series A and Series B is Greylock, F Prime, and
Mhm.
Forerunner.
Mhm.
And Tao is also one of our key investors. So we've loved having them on board. We have some great strategic investors on board, Memorial Hermann among them. And it's been fantastic. Each one brings something different to the table. We targeted that very specifically. Some are obviously very AI and tech focused. Some are very much operationally minded and focused in terms of the advice and what can they bring to the table. Some have a lot of healthcare, deep healthcare knowledge and relationships. Some have strategic value in relationships and collaboration. So I'm always looking to bring something new to the table with each new investor that we bring on board, each new board member we bring on board, because I do believe who's around the table really makes a huge difference in kind of how quickly you can reach the trajectory that you think you're set up for.
Where do you see the company in the next 3 to 5 years?
Oh gosh, that is such an open-ended question. I struggle with that one all the time. There are so many different ways that I could see this going in terms of just on a pure focus perspective. Commercially, we have some fantastic growth. One, we're already in the midst of a fantastic growth spike right now. I see that continuing across the board. We're expanding into some new verticals. I'm very excited to see where those go across the board, as well as some new clinical lines, which I think are going to really set us apart because no one else is doing, these areas that we're moving into, which is very exciting for us as in terms of continuing to build our offensive and defensive moats and continuing to diversify our revenue profile. I also see us moving internationally over the next few years, which will be great because, again, we have the platform. So while the clinical services might not translate internationally the same way, there's a lot of interest in what we're doing and how we're doing it using technology that I think will be fantastic to see if we can spread those benefits beyond our borders and then continue to grow the team. Right. So we are a team, we're small but mighty, about 60 people right now. We're never going to be the team that's like 1,000 people. That's unnecessary for what we're doing. There's a whole lot of leverage that comes with being a tech company, but I very much look forward to seeing the additional people we come on and the impact they're going to make.